May the 4th be with you all. Today is National Star Wars Day, and today I have decided to make a ranking video of all the Star Wars movies that I've seen from best to worst. Now, I have made just like with Marvel, I have made a ranking video of the Star Wars films before. However, just like with the Marvel films, not all of the Star Wars films that I've seen were on that previous list, and technically, that last video wasn't really a ranking, it was just me being kind of lazy and just reviewing all of the films in chronological order. So now I've decided, in honor of National Star Wars Day, to do an official ranking video of all of these Star Wars films that I've seen. So yeah, let's just get right into it. I honestly don't know how to talk about the Star Wars Holiday Special. I didn't even. I'm technically cheating because I didn't even finish this movie. I watched it for free on YouTube and I couldn't even finish it. So yeah, I don't really know how this ends. I do know that there's a scene with Carrie Fisher singing at the end, but I refuse to watch that. So yeah, just this movie, just why? I honestly don't. Besides to capitalize on the popularity of Star Wars, there's no plot. There's no point to this movie at all. This movie's just garbage. There is literally nothing good about this movie. I do not have a favorite part of this movie. Everything is bad, and my least favorite part of this movie is the entire movie. I actually know some people who like this movie, and you're entitled to your own opinions, but I'm sorry, I just don't understand why anyone would like this boring, poorly acted, awful looking movie. This movie just, there barely is anything to like about this movie. I have seen this movie 4 times, and the first 2 times I saw it, I was a little kid, so I did like it. And even though the first time I saw it, I was bored at times. However, watching this for a third and fourth time, it was almost unbearable, especially the fourth time. There are some things in this movie that I like though, such as the scene where Anakin finds his mother dead and just goes crazy on all the Tusken Raiders. That's probably my favorite part of this film. And my least favorite part of this film is definitely the character of Anakin. He's just this whiny, spoiled brat who's really creepy to Padme and doesn't like Sans. Like, seriously, what was that all about, Lucas? Come on. Why was this released in theaters? I honestly don't know why. This movie was originally supposed to be the first 4 episodes of the Clone Wars show, which is a really good show. But then Lucas was like, "No, you gotta put this in theaters," and this is a terrible George Lucas impersonation. Sorry, guys, I'm not good at impressions at all. But yeah, this movie isn't the worst that I've ever seen. There are some redeemable things to it. The voice acting is pretty decent. The animation, while it is pretty bad at times, I could see the potential in it, and the characters are a lot better in this than in the prequels by comparison. But this movie overall is just not very good. There are some things in this movie that I actually really like. The awesome fight between Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon. Some of the effects are pretty cool. Pod racing, even though it goes on for way too long, at times it is actually really cool and great to look at. The score by John Williams is amazing. There are scenes here and there that I can appreciate. However, overall, this movie is just really, really boring and messy, and that is thanks a lot to Jar Jar Binks, the most hated character in Star Wars. And yes, I do mean most hated character. Even though a lot of people don't like Rose on The Last Jedi, Jar Jar is definitely a worse character. I didn't really have high hopes for this movie to begin with, but unfortunately, this movie still disappointed me. It's definitely competent in terms of the filmmaking, the acting, the writing, the directing, but at the same time, there isn't anything really interesting going on. The only thing that really piqued my interest was whenever Donald Glover as Lando was on screen. The Kessel Run was actually kind of fun, and as was the train sequence. And also, I really liked the Darth Maul cameo at the end. However, the rest of the movie is just kind of dull. This movie is definitely the best of the prequel trilogy. However, it still has a ton of issues, such as the effects half of the time are pretty bad. Hayden Christensen is pretty bad. Natalie Portman, I can tell she's trying, but she's just not good at all. There are some good things in this movie though, such as Ewan McGregor once again is pretty good. The fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin at the Mustafar is pretty cool, and their fight with Count Dooku is pretty cool as well. The chemistry between Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, which was non-existent in Attack of the Clones, there is a bit of nice chemistry between them in this movie. The scene with Padme and Anakin, where it it's edited to make them look like they're looking at each other, and there's no dialogue, just this haunting, chilling music. That's definitely my favorite part of this movie. Yeah, this movie overall I do like, but it still has a ton of flaws. Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This movie I loved when I first saw it. However, rewatching it, it is a little hard to get through that first half of the movie, especially with that really awkward and creepy scene with the squid and Riz Ahmed. I mean, what was that about? Overall, this movie is pretty good, and the entire second half is amazing, and I really like K2SO. He is definitely my favorite character, the most interesting character, and Alan Tudyk does a great job. There are definitely some major issues with this film, but I do like it overall. I do like this movie, however, it does have some major issues, such as the Ewoks, and the pacing is definitely the weakest in the original trilogy. There are a lot of fun moments, such as that speeder chase scene, and all the stuff involving Luke, Vader, and the Emperor is really, really well done. And the ending of this movie I really like, both in the special edition and the original theatrical. The ending in both is pretty good. Speaking of special edition, though, that whole scene with the alien dancers singing and just that whole sequence is just really really bad. Even watching it for the first time as a kid, I really just was really creeped out by that sequence. And unfortunately, I actually have never watched the original theatrical run of this film in its entirety. The only times where I have watched this movie in its entirety were unfortunately in the special edition. I have seen moments from the theatrical run, but only on YouTube. So yeah, I do like this movie, and I'm pretty sure I would like it more if I watched the theatrical version. However, due to the fact that I have only seen the special edition in its entirety, this movie doesn't have as high of a score as I think others would give it. This movie isn't perfect. It definitely is very familiar and copies a lot of the same tropes and storytelling devices that were used in New Hope. However, it's still so much fun. I really, really like this movie. This movie introduced me to all these great new characters. It has great filmmaking, practical effects. The lightsaber fights are really, really well done. There's so much in this movie that I love, and a few things that I don't really like that much. However, the issues really aren't that major and don't bother me that much. And just, yeah, I mean, what else can I say? In my opinion, this movie has more issues than The Force Awakens does. However, I do like The Last Jedi more because, in my opinion, the themes are presented better, the action is much more well crafted. Even though I thought that the action in The Force Awakens was done well, I think that the action in this movie is better. One thing that I didn't really like about The Force Awakens, it didn't really bother me, but one thing that I thought could have been better was the cinematography, and I thought that the cinematography in The Last Jedi was much, much better. Editing could have been better at some parts, however, I don't think that it's ever bad. This movie, I do understand why a lot of people don't like this movie, but personally, I love it. Like I said, there are more issues with this movie than The Force Awakens. However, I don't care. The original Star Wars, the one that started it all. This movie definitely has aspects that don't hold up. The lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader is really stupid. There are lines of dialogue that are extremely cheesy. Some of the acting is pretty bad, especially from Carrie Fisher. However, all of these issues that would normally really put down another film, for some reason, all those issues with this film actually kind of enhance the experience. I really like this movie a lot, and it's thanks to this movie that we have this franchise in general. It's thanks to Lucas and the entire extremely dedicated cast and crew of this movie that we have this whole universe to love and explore. It's thanks to Lucas and all these really dedicated, hardworking people in this film that Star Wars even exists to begin with. This is the first, I guess, nerdy, geeky kind of franchise that I fell in love with. Ever since I was a kid, I loved Star Wars, and I just loved uh, going along these adventures with these characters. Even the prequels as a kid, I did enjoy a lot. Even though I don't like them as much now, I still have, with the exception of Attack of the Clones, I still have a feeling of warm fuzziness when watching Revenge of the Sith and The Phantom Menace because it does remind me of just why I love these movies, and especially as a kid, having so much fun with Star Wars action figures and all that. So, thank you, Lucas, for bringing us Star Wars. And last but not least, the film that Lucas supposedly had the least involvement with is my favorite and a lot of people's favorite films in the Star Wars franchise. The only issue I have with this movie, it isn't really that big of an issue, but the only issue I have with this movie is the scene where Leia kisses Luke, especially since we know later on that they're brother and sister. That was just like, ooh. But in defense of the film, at the time, they probably hadn't even figured out yet that Luke and Leia were siblings, and Luke and Leia themselves at the time of that scene didn't know. So yeah, it is still pretty awkward though, but it's extremely brief, and thankfully it doesn't go anywhere beyond that, just a kiss. Literally everything else in this movie, the effects, the story, the acting, the themes are all really, really excellent, really, really well done. There really isn't anything else I can say about this movie because, in my opinion, this movie is just perfect. I love this movie, and yeah, that's basically it.